Okay, so if you remember yesterday, we were talking about the Holy Temple and different sentences which come from the book of Kings. When King Solomon was building the temple, he built the first temple. And it says over there that first of all, that King David, that God had to choose King David before he chose Jerusalem, and even before he chose the temple, he chose King David. That's what it says. So we're discussing a little bit of this idea. What does it mean that God chose? What does it mean chose? We see that God chose the Jewish people. Asher Bachar Banu we call him, mean that he chose us and he gave us his Torah. Chose us. We see also that God chose Jerusalem. We see also that God chose the Holy Temple, chose that the Holy Temple should be built. Therefore, all these things, because God chose it, and because God is infinite, so it's not like the rest of the creation that God just created it, but it's because God chose it. And even more, there's another place we're going to get to. It says that God chose the creation, the day of creation. It says that Rosh Hashanah is the day that God chose to make the creation, when God chose. So in some ways, the creation is also eternal. So what does this idea mean? And what does it mean that God had to choose King David before he chose where to put the Holy Temple? I know I've said this a lot of times, but I'll say it again. This whole idea that, the Arabs claim that the Jerusalem belongs to them, and the Christians, it belongs to them. It's like giving a piano to a cow. What do they know how to do with the Jerusalem? Jerusalem is holy. Jerusalem is only for the Jewish people. God chose the Jews. He didn't change his mind. God chose, right? The Jews are eternally chosen. Jerusalem is eternally chosen. And both of these places are holy. To say that maybe another nation, another people, so whatever, they have a place in Jerusalem, like I say, it's like taking a piano and giving a cow, and then putting, sheet music on the piano and say, okay, start to play. He doesn't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? What are they going to do with Jerusalem? Jerusalem is a holy city. It has to be used properly in the holy temple. It has to bring godliness in the world. It has to make harmony in the world. It has to make blessing in the world. These people have absolutely no idea. They're not in the same category whatsoever. Okay, now we can understand the idea what it says in the Zohar, that that God chose Jerusalem, this depended, first of all, on him choosing King David. Such a choice, because it is an eternal choice, Hari Mitzad Atzmo, on its own, it's impossible that it should fall on a physical place. Eternal. Why? Because the physical world and its nature is here and then it's gone. It's the opposite of being eternal. Usually most people say, what's eternal? Heaven. You go to heaven. In this world, how long do you live? You live 100 years, 200 years. It doesn't make any difference. You live like Adam lived 930 years. Methuselah, he lived 970 years, but they died. It doesn't make it the day that they died. It's the same thing as if they lived one day. Nothing in this world is permanent, right? It says, if so, how can a physical place like Jerusalem be eternal? In other words, even though that God chose it eternally, so therefore drawing godliness, holiness on its own, this is going to be eternal. But this is only because of God. God is drawing it down. Should be shamed just like Shalosh Shayach Shinoi, just like God can never change. Also, God's choice never changes. Like we said before, that a true choice is not because of above, lo mitzad malat nivchar, not because of the one who is chosen, el mitzad ratzon bocher. Okay, this is a deep thing, and we're going to talk about it in a second. What does free choice really mean? When it says that God chose the Jews, it's not that he chose them because of a reason. Because if God chose us according to a reason, then when the reason was gone, so the choice would be gone. That's not true free choice. God chose us because God just decided. Just decided it was going to. But we can't say that reason that Jerusalem is holy because Jerusalem is special. Jerusalem is a unique place. No. Jerusalem, the reason God chose Jerusalem, because he just chose it. It's just God's unconditional choice. That the holiness there, therefore, the holiness of the place becomes eternal holiness. So that's the reason why. But 1 second. But on the other hand, how can you make a physical place eternal? That goes against all the laws of nature. God didn't want to change nature. He wanted this place to be holy within nature. And the nature of a physical place is that it's temporary. So how can God put permanent holiness because he chose a place into a place which is not a vessel for it? It's just a physical place. That's the reason why that choosing Jerusalem, this physical place, depended on God choosing David. That David would be a king, and he will be the shepherd on the Jewish people. Reshi is the Naig Amma, Resha, a head that had the Jewish people, the Kadmata. I'm sorry, Amma, Resha again. Resha, the Nahig, Amma, the Karta. He would lead the people of this city. Habechira b'malchut, that God chose King David, this is an eternal choice. Like Maimonides says, since that David was chosen, therefore his kingship, him and his children, the male children, forever will be kings. Kisacha yelnechon ad olam, your throne will be set there forever. It's a sentence in Shmuel, Samuel, when God chose King David. The Kashorim, even though that only the fitting sons of David were chosen to last forever. Nevertheless, the kingship, the rulership of the Jewish people will always be relatives, direct relatives of King David. God promised that, like it says, if your children leave my Torah and my commandments, they don't go. I will visit with strictness, with punishments, their sins and all sorts of whatever it is of pestilences and things. But nevertheless, my love will never go away from my people. This is the choice of King David, because God chose King David unconditionally. So God said, I have the right, I chose you unconditionally. Your children will always be kings. I have the right to punish you. I have the right to make, how do you say, temporary separations from you. Like it says, some Beresh, like it says in the beginning, Karati Brit B'David, it says in the beginning of Psalms, in this particular psalm, I have made a covenant with King David, Nishbati LeDavid Abdi, I have sworn to David, my servant, Ad Olam Achin Zaracha Bebeiti, Zaracha Ubanatai LeDovri, Ubeniti LeDavid, I have made for King David, for every generation and generation, a throne for him, Selah forever. So King David, when God chose him, it means that God chose him. It could be there's slight interruptions in time, but God will never renege on his choice. This eternal choice that God chose King David, and the soul of King David, that King David would be the servant of God and he would be surrendered to God totally, and therefore was drawn down the power of God above any changes. Like we said before, that whatever King David did was eternal, since that the place of the kingship of King David was in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is called the city of King David, and the completion of King David was only when he was sitting in Jerusalem. Malchus of David was only when he was in Jerusalem. So therefore, the power that God gave to King David that was eternal, and King David's kingship depends on Jerusalem, so it was drawn down also into this physical place of Jerusalem. And it made it fit to receive this eternal choice. Of Jerusalem. So the physical place on its own is just physical. God made a thing with the world that the world is going to be temporary. We're going to see that there's differences in this also. But when he chose King David, and King David is a combination of spiritual, which is eternal, and physical, which is apparently like worldly. But God said, you, David, your soul and your body are going to be eternal. King David is going to be eternal. How is it going to be eternal? In your children. Therefore, and the only place that it'll really be, King David will really be a king in its full senses is Jerusalem. So there, Jerusalem is also eternal. We can also say that this is also hinted in, let's see, I think a little bigger. This is also hinted at in the language of the Rambam, where he says by why Jerusalem is eternal. It says in Navi, the prophet said, "V'nechlato lo yazov." God said that the prophet said that for sure, God's portion he will not abandon. Now, usually, is a portion means the Jewish people, but we're here saying the Rambam says this refers to Jerusalem, the Fishik of our Omar, because it already said that God chose Jerusalem for his place, and he chose the Jewish people, that they should be his nation, eternal nation. Then it says afterwards that God will never leave his people, these people, Ummah, this nation of Jews, that he chose for his portion. And also he will never leave that place where he chose. And that's what it says, Bachar Hashem B'Tzion, that God chose Zion, Zion. Zion is Jerusalem. God wanted to dwell in it. It's one of the Psalms of one of the Shir Hamalos. Ki Yaakov Bachar Lo Yah, because Jacob was chosen by God. Yisrael was God's special people. Ki Lo Yitosh Hashem Amo, God will never leave his people, and his portion, which is Jerusalem in this case, he will never abandon. Shemadgis, that he stresses, King David is stressing that this choice in Jerusalem is connected to how God chose the Jewish people. Hainu lefisha nitzchius, because the eternal unconditional choice of Jerusalem depends on the fact that he chose the Jewish people. Because you can't say a physical thing is going to be eternal on its own. No, but because Jerusalem was chosen to be the place of the Jews, and the Jews are an eternal nation, like it says, Neitzer mata'ai maseh yadai lehitpa'er, the Jewish people are God's handiwork. It's from Isaiah. And therefore, Nimshachat is drawn down by means of the God choosing the Jewish people, also Jerusalem. Same thing with King David, because he was a person, a Jewish person, and God chose him. So therefore, he chose Jerusalem. Jerusalem is eternal. So, but he had to choose. God had to choose the Jewish people and King David first. Now we can understand that in addition, it says in the Midrash, HaChodesh is Elohim, Rosh Chodeshim. Now we're going to see that even the world, physical world, can be eternal. You'll see. And before God took the Jews out of Egypt, so he gave them a commandment. And the commandment was to sanctify the months. They didn't do this commandment until after they left Egypt. But nevertheless, he gave them the commandment. That was the first commandment that God gave to all the Jewish people as a whole, sanctifying the months. So it says, what month was it that God chose? That was the month of Nisan, the month, it's the coming month, next month. This month. This month is the first month of the year. When God chose his world, he chose for the first month, and he chose the first year. When he chose Jacob and his people, he also said Rosh Chodesh of redemption. Shagam b'Chazal, the rabbis say in this word of the Chazal, so it seems that God chose his world. When did God start to create the world? In Tishrei. Tishrei, that's when he created the first man. Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish people celebrate every year. The day that God created the man is our New Year's Day, Rosh Hashanah. That's when God finished the 6 days of creation. So when God chose creating the world, so he chose the month of Tishrei. When God chose the Jewish people, he chose the month of Nisan, 6 months later. That's going to be Passover. According to this, it seems that God chose two things. God chose the world, like for instance, how he chose Jerusalem, a place in the world. And then God chose Jacob and his sons. So now we have to look at this. What does the Midrash say? It says, when God chose the world, it doesn't say when God created the world. This, it seems to imply that the idea of the God made months and years, it's not relevant to the world the way it is created, but it's the way that God chose it. God chose his world. Since God chose Jacob and his people, he said in it, that there's going to be 1 year is going to be the first month of the year for the Jews. So we have the first month of the year for the world, that's Tishrei, and we have the first month of the year for the Jews. When God took the Jews out of Egypt, that's Nisan. That by means of God choosing Jacob and his sons, this made a change in the world, that he made Rosh Chodesh the first month of redemption, a whole new thing in the world. So suddenly the world itself became above the world. What does it mean? The intention that God chose the world means that God chose that this would be the place of the Jewish people and their service in doing Torah and the commandments, namely the world. The world was created for the sake of the Torah and for the sake of the Jewish people. If there was no Torah and Jewish people, God would not have created the world. He would have sufficed with, who knows, with Mars or something where there's no people there, or there's maybe, who knows what, some sort of, the spirits or something. When God created the world, he created the first day of the month and of the years. That's what does it mean, that the world would be only for the Torah and the Jewish people. That's the month when God took the Jews out of Egypt. I mean, you have to remember that Judaism is based not like any other religions. All the other religions, some person came along and he won a bunch of battles, or he came out from the desert, or he came from whatever, heaven on a cloud, or whatever he came from. And he said, I have a new dispensation. I have a new way to get you into heaven. And everybody said, this is the man I will believe. Judaism is that God had a whole entire nation, millions of people, and they were all slaves. And those people you can see today, those people are called Jews. And all of those people God took out of Egypt. It took only 1/5 out of Egypt, but nevertheless, all the people that he took out of Egypt, those are the Jews from today. And then he gave all of them the Torah. All of this is part of the world, the physical, actual physical world. So therefore, God, nevertheless, since the world is made fitting, a vessel for the service of the Jewish people, because God chose the world to put the Jewish people in. As Enzem Mitzav Shel Geula, just because the Jewish people are in the world, this is not total redemption. Redemption shows going out of all limitations. Since that the world was created limited, so therefore, according to, we feel that the world, even when you feel that the world is God's world, and even more that it's the world that God chose, he chose it. Namely, what does it mean? He changed it. He made the world a vessel for the Jewish people and the Torah, but nevertheless, it still is a world. Therefore, we're still limited. That's the whole idea of God. So that when God created the world, he put man in the world. Adam was put in the world, and he even gave Adam commandments. It says when he put Adam in Gan Eden, it says L'Avda L'Shamra. That was already a hint at the 613 commandments, positive, negative. And God said to man, be fruitful and multiply. Another commandment. And God said to Adam, don't eat from the tree. Another commandment. So he had commandments, but nevertheless, the world was still world. The world was still limited. And when God took the Jewish people out of Egypt, that's the whole novelty of God taking the Jews out of Egypt, that the Jewish people were above the world. Why? Because the souls of the Jewish people is it's a part of God. So the Jews are like the holy temple in the world. It's God in the world, every Jew. That's why all these prophecies of Isaiah, where it says, my son and my son, is talking about the Jews. The Jews are the son of God. And therefore, the Jews have the power that they can actually have geula. They can actually change the world. They can elevate themselves above the world while they're still in the world. And this is also fitting to the whole idea of what it says, the Bala Akeda. The Bala Akeda is a person that wrote, it's a book called the Akeda, which I'm sorry that I forgot his name. What can I do? I forgot his name. I have the book. Oh, the Bir Hevdal explains the difference between how God chose his world and he chose Jacob. That he chose his world, this refers to nature. Nature is also a miracle. But when he chose Jacob, Yaakov, and his sons, the Jewish people, so this is miracles which are above nature, that God made for the Jewish people alone. Right? That's why the Jewish people, it's such a big problem. Listen, when it comes down to it, that's another reason why Jewish people are hated, because they're like the men from Mars. They're like the men from, so to speak, they're not really a part of the world as the world seems to be. The Jewish people are a part of the world as the world ideally will be. Pure godliness. But every Jew is the son of God, even whether it's son, daughter, whether they want it and they know it. The Jewish people are eternal. That's what it says. When God chose Jacob and his sons, he chose the first month of redemption. What does it mean, redemption? That the whole idea of geula, redemption, means that the whole world will not be limited to the laws of nature. Not just for the Jewish people, but the whole entire world. In other words, even all the non-Jews will all see and realize and feel that everything in the world is a miracle. Therefore, God, when God chose the Jewish people, this refers not on just the Jewish people, it's Shehi Lamayl, which is above the world, but this is that the God chose them, that they will complete the intention of creating the whole entire world. Al Yadei Kiyum HaTorah means of doing the Torah and the commandments. That for the sake of this, the souls of the Jewish people came into the world and they were put into physical bodies in order, Kavan, Shagam Kishin Neshama, you read it, that even to show that even when the soul comes into the body, even to the physical world, nevertheless, it still is a part of God from above. Mamish, really in this world. Therefore, not only that by means of this descent, nothing is removed or, how do you say, detracted from the Jewish people, subtracted from the Jewish people, from their essence, which the Jewish people are a portion of God. Exactly the opposite. The whole reason that God put a portion of him in the world is because by means of their service in the world, doing Torah and the commandments, it makes a redemption which is above the world. This is no contradiction to what we said before, that the world, because it's a physical creation, it can't possibly be eternal, and it can't be possibly released from its limitations. You can't put unlimited infinity into the physical world. It wrecks up the world. Right? It says not exactly. From the world itself, it's true, the world can't go out of being limited. By means of the Jewish people, and the Jewish people being in the world, and the Jewish people doing the commandments, because they are, and learning the Torah, and even more that the service of the Jewish people with the world and in the world itself, the world becomes a dwelling for the essence of God. And by means of this, they draw down holiness in physical things in the world. As by means of this, it's set in the world that there can be actually redemption. The world can go out of its worldly limitations. Or like I said in simple language, that you realize that everything is a miracle. Everything is there because God wants it to be there. He's creating it intentionally every instant, and everyone will feel it. When you reveal in every detail of the world that its real existence is for the sake of the Jews. What do it mean it's for the sake of the Jews? It's for the sake of the Jews that the whole existence of the world is just one detail in the Jewish people, in order that the Jewish people can do what God wants. God, this world is tremendously important to God. So God put the Jews in the world to fix it up and reveal that fact. Therefore, God chose the Jewish people that they should be found in this physical world and that they should do their work in the world, in this physical world. Then, just the same as the Jewish people themselves, it will be in a way of geula, of redemption, which is above any limitations of the world. So also the Jewish people can bring about in the whole entire physical world that everything that they do, how they serve God, will be geula in the world. And so, in other words, in a simple summation, what we're saying over here is that God created a world, and that the world is limited, and that the world is limited to a certain amount of time, and every detail of the world is limited. That's what the laws of science, right? Nature, the laws of nature show everything in the world is limited. And according to the way the world is a limited world, the Jews are the smallest people, and the Jews are the weakest people, and the Jews, right? But somehow or other, all of a sudden, the Jews put a little bit of infinity into the world. Infinity in the world, how could that possibly be, right? How could you can't put something infinite into a finite world. It just doesn't work. But that's the Jews. And because God put the Jews into the world, and then God gave the Torah, and he gave the commandments. And God said the Jewish people can really only truly do the commandments if they're in the land of Israel, right? Because there's all the agricultural commandments, and there's the whole, what about the Holy Temple? And the Holy Temple, that's also eternal. It's an eternal place. Physically in the world, there were interruptions, but nevertheless, it's fit. So that says the Rebbe, the whole idea of the Jewish people is to connect the creator with the creation. When that's done, and you see that the only reason that there is a creation is in order to fulfill this purpose, that God should be revealed here, and the only ones that can do this is the Jewish people. That's their job. So if so, the world was made for the Jewish people to reveal God in it. That makes the world part of the infinite Jewish people, which the infinite Jewish people are a part of God. There it says the Jewish people are Chelik Elokam Mamash, the sons of God. So by choosing King David as a leader over the Jewish people, and choosing the Jewish people, as God made a link between the heavens and the earth. Even more, he made a link between the creator of the heavens and the earth to show this earth is even higher than the heavens. So the Jewish people, that's the link that makes the world holy. Alder similarly is that God chose Jerusalem because Jerusalem on its own is not relevant that it should be eternal, but he did it after he chose King David, because King David is a Jew, and it's an eternal choice that God made. So it's drawn down automatically that Jerusalem itself should be infinite, a city of King David. In other words, the whole world becomes just a one big infinite part of God's infinite plan to make his infinite will revealed in the lowest places. And in order to do that, there had to be, first of all, a low place, and then it'll be transformed by the Jews to be what it really is, infinite. A big problem with us is we have no idea what it means, infinite. So we think to ourselves, listen, so what's going to be then, right? So the world becomes infinite, it becomes infinitely godly. So then what happens? Then it's really boring. No more, you mean there's not going to be any more, streets and cars and people and jokes and nothing, it'd just be boring. So the answer to that is that the world now is boring. Now the world is boring. People have to look for new things because we don't appreciate what now is. We don't appreciate the novelty of this very moment and how this very moment is dynamic and constantly changing. That's pure godliness found in the moment, which is not the case. The past is dead, and the future has not even come yet. So it doesn't really even exist, so to speak. What's really, all that really exists is right now, and we don't appreciate right now. In the future, we will appreciate now. We'll see why God is creating everything. We'll see the infinity of the creator of the universe, and more it will become God's world, and we'll be welcome guests in this world, and the world will be very, very interesting and very alive and very happy every moment.